Hi, welcome to Retro Modern Moto, where we talk about retro-styled motorcycles that have modern reliability. And this is a bike that fits that description. This is my own personal 2021 Moto Guzzi V85. This bike is retro-styled, it's iconic, it's a little bit quirky, and it is really fun to ride. We'll talk about the capabilities of the bike, both on-road and off-road. And we do have several off-road opportunities here in the beautiful state of Arizona. So a lot of different ways to challenge the bike. So we'll do some of that. We'll also talk about the specs, and then maybe that'll help you decide if this is the kind of bike that you'd like to have in your stable of bikes as well. Stay with us. Every Moto Guzzi comes with a built-in accessory, and that's the Moto Guzzi Aura. Moto Guzzi has been making motorcycles since 1921. In their factory in Mandello dell'Orio, Italy, and you can feel it in the brand. It has gone from the first motorcycles in 1921 to what I think is kind of the establishment of the new, more modern Moto Guzzi in 1967 with the V7, which has that transverse twin that we're all familiar with. And that's really led into the modern Moto Guzzi, where they're making tremendous retro modern motorcycles and have been doing extremely well. They are opening a new factory in September of this next year, 2026, which is going to launch them even further into modernity. But I'm sure that they'll be retaining all of their character that they've established and built up all these years. Which brings us to 2019 and the introduction of the first V85TT, which was then followed in 2020 by the Travel Edition, which is the one that I've got. Moto Guzzi's marketing materials referred to the bike as a retro enduro when it came out, which is a category of one, because still at this point I don't think anyone has anything that's really a retro styled ADV bike out in the marketplace. Let's talk about some of the basic specs. The bike weighs 465 pounds dry, about 535 wet, which is a big jump, but it's largely because it has a enormous gas tank. This is a 6-gallon plus gas tank, so that's part of the difference in the wet weight. It doesn't necessarily feel like that heavy of a bike, but it does feel like a big stable bike, which is something that I'm always looking for on mine. It's a 19-inch front wheel, 17-inch in the rear, and the seat height is about 32.6 inches. So as ADV quote-unquote bikes go, this one is quite accessible for a lot of riders. Not too high of a seat height, even though it's got pretty nice suspension travel in the front and the back. The bike has a nice sound, particularly if you grab a bunch of throttle over about 4,500 RPM. The bike has double disc front brakes provided by Brembo. Brembo in the rear as well. The brake performance overall I think is excellent. There are a couple features that really set this V85 apart from other bikes in general, and particularly versus other ADV bikes, in that it has a shaft drive. It's the only ADV bike that's got a shaft drive, so you have less maintenance with regard to a chain, and it is a very smooth power delivery, which is kind of nice. It is a transverse V-twin engine, which is very characterful. You feel that little bit of a rumble and rock back and forth, which I think is really kind of a fun experience to have on a motorcycle. It's definitely a different feel than anything else you've ridden. It is air-cooled, 850 cc's, and has about 80 horsepower, 60 foot-pounds of torque. Does feel quite nice and torquey as you're riding it. I mentioned the weight earlier. It does feel like it carries the weight relatively low, despite the enormous fuel tank that I mentioned. It's at 6 gallons. So it is a very comfortable ride, both on highway and, in my opinion, off-road. I find the bike to be very comfortable on the highway. The ergonomics are terrific. I'm 5'11" and it fits me really well. The bike accelerates up to speed very comfortably, and the cruise control, though quirky, works really well. Moto Guzzi is always about style. I really like the dual headlights in the front, but that daytime running light, the eagle shape, really takes the cake, and you can see it starting up here. I mentioned I have the travel edition. It does come with some upgrades like a taller windscreen, the side cases, heated grips, which has turned out to be very handy even in Arizona, auxiliary LED lights, the MIA connectivity system, which I've never used, frankly, and then 2 extra ride modes, including a custom option. Arizona has so many great places to ride off-road. The Apache Trail is one of them. It's just a spectacular ride. It is mostly unpaved. 4-wheel drive vehicles can't get through there, but it's sure more fun on a motorcycle. The Apache Trail starts just east of Phoenix, so for me that's about an hour and a half of high-speed highway. But between the highway ride and then the 17 or there so miles of terrain that can be anything from moderate to somewhat challenging to pretty comfortable, it's a really good test for a bike like this, and the V85 really performed flawlessly. I later put Shinko 805s on the bike, which I really like. I've had those on different bikes before, but I think at this point I still had the original rubber on, and it was still competent that way, so the bike was really as stock as I took this ride. To help you handle that rugged terrain and irritating washboards, the bike does have an off-road riding mode for managing ABS, traction control, and for modulating the throttle response. And you can fully turn off the ABS, which is certainly nice. The bike does have tubeless tires available starting in 2021, I believe, as well. The challenges are the bike has a ground clearance of only 5.9 inches, which isn't a whole lot in this type of venue, but that's kind of the trade-off with having a relatively low seat height. And then along with that becomes the travel on the front and rear is only about 6.7 inches. I found it to be very workable in these type of conditions, but if you certainly wanted to get very aggressive with your off-road riding, that might be a limitation. So what is there not to like about this bike? Well, the gearbox might not be as quiet and smooth as some bikes in the market. My Triumph is certainly smoother. My Royal Enfields, believe it or not, are probably smoother. That said, I haven't had any issues with false neutral or missing shifts in any way. I suppose the most frequent complaint would be that the bike is quote-unquote down on power. I don't find that to be the case. The only reason that one could want more power, I think, is in the occasion of needing to pass someone if you're already going 85 miles an hour and you need to surge to 95 or 100 relatively quickly, which does not happen very often. It can happen on Arizona freeways here in the United States, but otherwise it doesn't happen all that often. And so for me, that's not really a deal breaker. The bike has plenty of power to me to handle almost everything else that can come across as situations on the highway. And for me, sometimes that less horsepower can be better in terms of the off-road capabilities. The dealer network is smaller than with many brands. which can be a challenge if you're touring and have any issues and need any parts, etc. That certainly is a valid concern. So who should get a Moto Guzzi V85? Well, someone that really likes classic looks, wants a bike that has personality and that very much stands out in a crowd. You don't see that many of these, and they really do get attention wherever you go. There are more competent bikes off-road in the category. There are bikes with a lot more horsepower, but this bike is great to live with. It is a great tourer and a very competent off-road machine, and certainly brings an element and a vibe to it that you can't get with anything else. I had a Honda Africa Twin. It was a very competent bike. I did like the bike, but it really, frankly, was boring. And ultimately, it led me down the path to get the V85 for myself. So that's the type of person that would like this kind of bike. It isn't about the spec sheet, it's about the riding experience, and the V85 really makes a terrific riding experience. So be safe out there, and thank you for watching.